You heard it correct. UFC 321 officially flopped. Officially flopped. I've been saying it. Aspinall is not the star that people are portraying him to be. It's nothing against Aspinall, but I'm just calling it like I see it. That's all. I've been trying to tell you guys, Aspinall's not really a star. He's cool. He's the heavyweight champ and shit. But I'm gonna tell you guys how UFC 321 flopped. It's like it flopped worse than the other flops. It flopped worse than Pereira versus Magomed. A little bit of context. But we got percentages of, the highest trending card of the year, viewership wise, pay-per-view wise, and then we have like the tiers below that. Apparently Holloway and Poirier was one of the biggest, or was the biggest pay-per-view of the year. I think based off my numbers though, Ilya versus Charles was probably the biggest pay-per-view of the year, if I'm being real. Based off of my metrics, Ilya Charles was the biggest pay-per-view of the year. And then I honestly think it was Max Holloway versus Ilya. Okay, here's the tweet. Now, Jed Goodman posted this. Maybe there's an article somewhere, but this is probably the Cliff Notes. Per one, based on Google Trends, the UFC 318 show with DP and Max Holloway was the biggest show of the year. The second biggest would have been UFC 319, Duplessis versus Chimaev. UFC 320 with Pereira and Magomed was down 30% from UFC 319. Okay? So let me just say it one more time. Second biggest event of the year was UFC 319. Okay? Second biggest. Pereira versus Magomed, 30% down from the second biggest card of the year. 30% down, okay? Now, from that, UFC 321, Aspinall versus Gone, McKenzie versus Virna, which is, we don't even need to mention that shit. But that was down 45%, okay, from UFC 319. So, in other words, too, 15% lower than the Pereira-Magomed Ankalaev fight. So, 45% lower than 319, 15% lower sales than 320. Now, they are saying it was an afternoon show out of the time slot, but I would argue that that does better for U.S. viewership because the NFL plays, their games in the afternoon. Basketball has games, not in the afternoon, but a Saturday afternoon I feel like is the same as like a Sunday morning football type thing. It's a Saturday. People are home. They're waking up, no work. It's not a weekday event. So being in the afternoon, I'm not going to buy that excuse. And then there is a comment that says, maybe now you can stop wondering why John isn't trying to fight Tom. And they're shouting out Ariel. So they're kind of calling out Ariel. Because Ariel's big that John didn't fight Tom. He should have accepted it. All this stuff. You guys can watch Ariel's show to know what he's been saying. But low key, right? If Tom's not a draw, this is what John's been talking about this whole time. Go build your name. Stop trying to capitalize off of mine. Go build your name. The problem is that the UFC was just keeping this dude on the back burner. They wouldn't let him go build his name, unfortunately, right? No matter how hard he tried. Although I think Tom could have tried harder. I think Tom could have tried the approach of telling a couple lies to the media, saying like, I'm ready to fight this person, fuck John Jones, book me this fight, and see what happens. Tom was a little bit too much of a good boy. From my perspective, he was a little bit too much of a good boy, listening to UFC's orders and not playing the game of the internet, public perception. There's a lot more than just like, oh, Daddy Dana told me that I need to wait for John, so I'm gonna sit back and wait for John. Like, no. You should have been putting out some feelers or something like that. Call out Cyril Gahn. Call out a heavyweight that won. Tweet at him, Oh, great performance. I would like to see you next. Like something. Act like you're the champ. Aspinall didn't do that. And like I said, I realized Aspinall was getting honey dick by the UFC, but I wish he would have tried a little bit more. And I don't blame John necessarily for not wanting to fight Tom because I feel like this is something people haven't talked about. Everybody has, the reason why I even put that in the headline today is because everybody has been acting like Aspinall is a draw. He is a star. I'm probably one of the only people saying, like, yo, Aspinall's not a fucking star. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Aspinall not a fucking star. And here's the proof. So I don't think John was necessarily fully in the wrong for not wanting to fight. Oh, you know what? Scratch that, because he got offered $30 million to fight a no-name, so no excuses. I guess maybe you could look at this card as the fourth biggest of the year. I don't know. Just because there's no permanent vision impairment doesn't mean his ocular muscles and vision weren't temporarily damaged. I don't think the doctor could see behind his eyeballs. They failed to promote anyone. They were too busy glazing a quitter. Maybe he doesn't want bad publicity. Fame and infamy aren't the same. What can I say to Tom Berry right now? What can I say to Tom Berry? To the point of seeing behind his eyeballs, I mean, haven't they done x-rays or something like that to confirm there's no retina detachment? I'm pretty sure there's like tests you can do to make sure behind the eyeball is fine. They do fail to promote Tom Berry, I'll give it to you. Not because they're glazing John, they just fucking suck at promoting these days. If we're keeping it all the way a buck, no bias on my end. Maybe he doesn't want the bad publicity. You know what though, Tom Berry? This is what I'll say, and this is what I get on guys about. That's Tom's fault. Bad publicity, good publicity, you can go for both. If you can understand the game, it doesn't even matter. Bad publicity can be like what Chael Sonnen did and shit like that. Look at Chael Sonnen now. He got a career long after the UFC. Imagine Tom on all the steroids John took. All right, Tom Berry, I got you. It's MMA, not the WWE. They let the champ go inactive for years. Yeah, it's MMA, not the WWE, Tom Berry, but it is show business. It is show business, and the UFC's run a little bit differently. I wouldn't even say that boxers have to do this stuff. But the UFC really, really wants the fighters to create storylines and create narratives. And like you're saying, Tom Berry, the UFC doesn't even do that for the fighters. So somebody's got to. Who's going to step up and do it? We just said the UFC doesn't do it. So I know it's not the WWE, but the UFC isn't promoting their fighters. So yes, it's not the WWE, but you have to have something to sell. Or else you're going to be 45% below the second biggest show of the year as the heavyweight champion of the world. You've been out for 16 months. This was a long-awaited return. This social media drama between Aspinall and Jon Jones has been going on for like a year. That's all promotion. And he was 45% below the second biggest pay-per-view of the year as the heavyweight champion of the UFC. But yeah, Tom not selling. And he needs to figure it out. He's the heavyweight champion of the UFC. 100% finish rate. That's good, bro. That's good. But he's got 100% finish rate, and he's 45% below the second biggest pay-per-view of the year as the UFC heavyweight champion. Maybe had they secured Ngannou, we'd have a fucking pay-per-view. Keep that same energy when Tom puts Gon in a coma. But this is the thing. You guys do group this in. Like, you guys aren't letting me, right, call it down the middle. You're making me kind of like fall on one side or the other. Like I already told you, I think Tom has a good chance in the rematch as well. I'm not one of the people doubting Tom, being like, oh, he was getting his ass beat. He quit in that shit. He's got no chance against Gon. Like, that's not where I'm at. But I'm allowed to say that Tom didn't sell a pay-per-view and still be intrigued on the fight coming up. How many people does he have to sleep? Dana ruined the sport as a whole. It's not just about fighting. You got to show your personality. You got to connect with your fans in a different way. And I know Aspinall does that, right? With YouTube and stuff like that. I'll give you a solution. Because clearly it's not working with the YouTube stuff. He does 500,000 views on YouTube, and he's 45% below Pereira, who also has a booming YouTube channel. So what does that tell you guys? Should fighters really be trying to grow their name on YouTube? I don't know. It is tough for fighters to grow their name these days. Here's where I will blame the UFC. These guys would be stars if they got paid like stars. The UFC heavyweight champion should already be a millionaire. He should be driving Rolls Royces. He should be going out, living a lavish lifestyle, creating headlines, okay? To the point of the YouTube channel, these guys don't need a fucking YouTube channel. I just told you, Pereira doesn't fucking sell. right? Versus Ankalaev, 30% below Duplessis versus Chimaev. And Aspinall versus Gane doesn't sell. These guys have YouTube channels, Pereira and Aspinall. What they're not doing, though, what will grow your name, is going out, creating headlines in the media, getting TMZ to make posts about you, going out somewhere to events and taking interviews with TMZ on the street. Getting the other outlets to post more about you is what they need to be doing. And they need more money to do that. If we see Tom pulling up to a club in a Rolls Royce, that's a headline. That makes him look above everybody else. The problem is that these fighters are living similar lifestyles to the fan base. Right? Like, what's the difference between a fighter like Aspinall, right, and like your average 45-year-old man? There's nothing different about Aspinall and your average 45-year-old man as far as their lifestyles go. Aspinall is not living above and beyond the average man. And that's why he's not really a star. Because you have to sell it. It's an image. There's a lot to it. Because I'm just telling you, Tom Barry, because you're asking how many people does he have to knock out. It's an image thing. It's an image thing. The more people that are posting about you puts out the public perception that you are more important than you might be. And I'm not blaming Tom for this. I'm actually blaming the UFC for not compensating him properly to live a lavish superstar lifestyle. That's where I would say it's the UFC's fault. They don't have stars because they're not paying them enough money to live a lavish lifestyle. And let me give you an example. Ryan Garcia. Okay? Ryan Garcia gets himself in all kinds of headlines because he's 20 years old with millions of dollars. He's figuring it out. Right? He's going out here buying a $500,000 chain. He's going over to this club hooking up with some, female rapper type shit. All these things grow the name. I'm not telling Tom Aspinall to go hook up with a fucking female rapper. I'm just telling you guys there's more to it than just knocking people out. And yes, it's partially the UFC's fault. Maybe he's a competitor and not a giant douchebag. Well, Tom Barry, I know you'd probably go ahead and be like, Floyd Mayweather's a giant fucking douchebag, right? I'm sure that's kind of what you're referring to. Floyd Mayweather, a giant fucking douchebag. Well, Floyd Mayweather also the biggest or the most highest paid boxer in history. The most highest paid boxer in history. So I don't think he minds getting called a giant douchebag being the highest paid boxer in history. And I don't think Aspinall would mind being called a douchebag if he was the highest paid UFC fighter in history. The puck doesn't just stop at, oh, giant douchebag, don't do it. Because, yeah, who else got called a giant douchebag? Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, but they're also the biggest stars in their respective sports. They also made the most money in their respective sports. At some point, you got to stop caring what other people think and do what's best for your pockets. And it's all love to Aspinall. But the truth is, right, the truth is he didn't sell. That's the truth.